statue of Confederate General Stonewall Jackson outside the Virginia Military Institute. The decision to take it down comes after black cadets made allegations of racism on campus. The century-old statue is now being relocated to its new home at the Virginia Museum of the Civil War. Breaking news, the new bombshell report that the Trump administration turned down Pfizer's offer to sell the U.S. more vaccine doses earlier this year. Now, if it gets approved later this week, why the U.S. may not be able to purchase extra until this summer. This as hospitals are running out of ICU beds, and Dr. Anthony Fauci says Christmas will be even more of a challenge for our healthcare workers than Thanksgiving. Hours away from the Pfizer vaccine getting to work in the UK, with certain seniors and workers receiving top priority. What we expect to learn about the vaccine here in the U.S., including when and how it will roll out. Millions of hard-working Americans struggling to make ends meet, now facing being put out onto the street, unable to pay rent. The eviction clinics trying to provide help. One of the most influential songwriters of all time sells his entire catalog of songs. Bob Dylan giving up rights to more than 600 songs spanning 60 years. The real numbers behind the icon's blockbuster deal. And a Christmas decorating dad joins us to talk about the racist letter he received after putting up a black Santa.
I personally don't understand why, when you could easily explain that to your own children like we do to our daughter.
How his neighbors showed their support. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us as we begin yet another critical week in this pandemic. States are racing to save lives, and Americans are pleading with Congress to save livelihoods. It has been 129 days since the $600 a week extra federal unemployment ran out. Ricardo Ramirez is one of millions who was furloughed from his job in March at a hotel in Texas. He says he's applied for hundreds of jobs since then. His message for Congress tonight: this is not a game. It's about time for them to do something for the community. Similar stories abound across the country and increasingly inundated hospitals. The governor of Pennsylvania with this dire message today: if the worst happens, hospitals will not be able to treat all sick Pennsylvanians. And Overseas V-Day is tomorrow in the United Kingdom, as that country will start injecting members of the public with Pfizer's vaccine in the morning. But tonight here in the U.S., we are learning the Trump administration reportedly turned down additional doses of Pfizer's vaccine, which could receive emergency authorization as early as this week. Jonathan Karl leads us off from Washington.
Tens of millions of Americans may have to wait longer, months longer, to receive a COVID vaccine because over the summer, the Trump administration passed on buying more doses from Pfizer. For months, the president has touted his efforts to deliver on a vaccine.
Vaccines are on their way at a level that nobody ever thought possible.
But tonight, the New York Times reports and ABC News has confirmed that Pfizer offered to sell the U.S. government additional doses of its COVID-19 vaccine late this summer, but the Trump administration turned them down. They decided to buy only 100 million doses from Pfizer, enough to vaccinate 50 million Americans, because a full vaccine requires 2 shots. By contrast, the European Union bought 200 million doses from Pfizer with an option to buy more. Pfizer may now not be able to provide the additional doses for the United States until June. U.S. officials involved with Operation Warp Speed tell ABC News they didn't want to buy more vaccine from Pfizer until they were sure that it would be authorized by the FDA. They also say that combined with vaccines from Moderna and other companies, they will have enough vaccine to make sure that every American who wants to be vaccinated can be by the middle of next summer. Meanwhile, President Trump is refusing to acknowledge the reality that the pandemic is entering its most dangerous and deadly phase yet.
We're rounding the turn. We're rounding the corner on the pandemic.
The day after he spoke those words, his own personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was in the hospital after testing positive for coronavirus.
Rudy's doing well. I just spoke to him. He's doing very well. No temperature.
But tonight, Giuliani is still in the hospital. This after he spent the last few weeks traveling the country, making unfounded allegations about election fraud, shaking hands and doling out high fives. In Michigan, Giuliani asked a witness to take off her mask. She declined.
I don't want you to do this if you feel uncomfortable. But would you be comfortable taking your mask off so that people could hear you more clearly?
Can you hear me now?
Not clear.
Can everyone hear it clearly?
We can hear it. We can hear you.
Okay.
Imagine that lots of contact tracing is now underway. Jonathan Karl joins us now. And John, the president has touted what his administration has done to produce a vaccine. So how are they explaining why they didn't order more for Americans from Pfizer?
Officials associated with Operation Warp Speed, the White House's efforts to develop the vaccine and arrange for its distribution, say that at the time they didn't want to buy more doses because the vaccine had not yet been approved. And they also say that given that Pfizer is just one of 6 companies they were working with, that they will have more than enough vaccine doses to ensure that every American who wants to be vaccinated will be able to get access to a vaccine by the end of the second quarter next year, so by the middle of next summer.
And meanwhile, President-elect Biden today announced the new leaders of his healthcare team, but we heard some concern today that the Trump team is still not communicating with the Biden team on their plans on that vaccine rollout.
They say that they still need more information on the critical question of how to get the vaccine out across the country. I mean, we're talking about really hundreds of millions of doses. This is a monumental logistical challenge, and they say they still don't have all the information from the president's coronavirus task force and Operation Warp Speed on what the plans are for doing that.
Jonathan Karl, thanks so much as always.
Thank you, Lindsay.
This all comes as the virus surges across the country, hospitals staggering under the demand, governors and mayors imposing new restrictions to keep them from being overwhelmed. Our Matt Gutman is in Billings, Montana tonight.
Another COVID patient is flatlining here at the Billings Clinic in Montana. Teams of exhausted nurses throwing on PPE. That patient would not survive. Doctors across this country are losing 90 Americans to the virus every hour.
We're running between 150 to 200% of our ICU capacity every day.
Many COVID patients here doubled up in rooms. And 2 doors down the hallway, under the tangle of tubes, is one of their own. Ellen Edlund, who is an ICU nurse herself in this very ward. Kelly Duffy has been Ellen's best friend for 20 years. They worked together in the ICU.
100% caregiver to the core. Like, that's just who she is.
Just before she was put on a ventilator, Ellen texted Kelly.
Just pray for me. That's all you can do for me. Just please. You know, she was so scared.
This is the first time Kelly's going to get to see Ellen.
With the family's consent, we were granted extraordinary access. Kelly was going to see her friend for the first time in 3 weeks. Through the glass, this wasn't the skier and hiker she's known for 20 years.
Oh, yeah, she's very puffy.
We don PPE and prepare to go in.
Hey, buddy. Ellen. It's Kelly. Hey, Ellen.
Ellen is on ECMO. A machine is circulating and oxygenating her blood. Her doctor, Erin Rain, spoke to Ellen just before putting her on that machine.
Ellen asked you, am I going to die? But you couldn't tell her categorically no.
No. Because a lot of what we see is that when people get on the ventilator, they do die.
And they do die. This hospital just lost a doctor to COVID, Dr. Larry Anstutz. It's all had a chilling effect on nurses here.
Are people actually texting you, pray for me, Kelly? I'm scared to go to work?
All the time.
That as the country topped 1 million cases in the first 5 days of December. In Massachusetts, this 220-bed field hospital now taking patients, and another one is in the works. And the peak of that dreaded Thanksgiving surge is still a week away.
The problem is that's going to come right up to the beginning of the Christmas Hanukkah potential surge. So you have a surge upon a surge.
With the number of ICU beds in California dwindling, the state issuing a 3-week stay-at-home order to save lives. New York following California's lead, warning it will close indoor dining in areas where hospitalization rates are on track to exceed 90%. Back in Ellen's room, a moment of grace.
Oh, you're going to do great. Isn't that sweet? I love to see those eyes.
Those eyes, the big blue eyes, they open.
Such deep gratitude for those moments of grace. And Matt Gutman joins us now from Billings, Montana. Matt, you've talked to the doctors and nurses there. What gives them hope tonight?
Well, until this latest news from Pfizer, the notion that many of them are going to be vaccinated in the coming days definitely buoys them, knowing that they will be protected from the onslaught of virus that literally has been washing up against this hospital as we've been here over the past 15 minutes. The ER here is full, the hospital at over 200% capacity. But if they can show up at this hospital not afraid of ending up like Ellen that is really going to buoy them. And the other thing, when ICU patients can be wheeled out of the ICU care into regular med-surg and are on the road to wellness, that is something that makes them feel whole again. Lindsay.
Can imagine. Okay, Matt Gutman, thanks so much as always. While the U.S. will likely face many dark days ahead, there is some light at the end of the tunnel in the form of vaccines. And just hours from now, the first doses of Pfizer's vaccine will be administered to people across the Atlantic in the U.K., a scene that could very well play out here in the U.S. within the next week, pending the FDA's emergency authorization. ABC's James Longman is in London as the vaccine rollout gets underway.
Tonight, Britain is just hours away from beginning to vaccinate its country against COVID. The Pfizer vaccine in rows of specialized refrigerators in secured locations. And this is a life it could change. Tomorrow morning, 87-year-old Harry Shukla will be among the first to get the historic shot.
It's good, that I got the opportunity of doing that. And so I'm not nervous or anything like that. I'm looking forward to it.
He's part of the UK's priority groups, those over 80, nursing home residents and frontline healthcare workers. And the US could be administering this same vaccine in just days. An independent FDA committee is set to vote as early as Thursday, with emergency use authorization coming any time after that. Once given the green light, people could get their first shots within 24 hours. Once authorized, it's the states who'll decide who gets it first. CDC guidelines recommend nursing home residents and healthcare workers.
We know that 40 to 50% of the deaths are occurring in people who are in long-term care facilities or older, but we also want our healthcare workers who are on the front lines to be able to get it.
Kristin Choi took part in the vaccine trial and has now published a letter in a medical journal encouraging people to take the vaccine. After her second shot, she felt pain in her shoulder, chills, a headache and a high fever.
Initially, I felt pretty bad and definitely was worried about it. But fortunately, none of it ever got serious enough that I had a major problem.
Experts say that people should expect some mild reaction that could last a few days, as with any vaccine. But Kristin says her symptoms went away within 24 hours.
I would do it again in a heartbeat if I had the chance, even if I knew that I would have a strong reaction again.
Real vote of confidence there for the vaccine. Our thanks to James for that. And back here in the United States, the race is on to prepare for vaccine distribution across the country. And we wanted to get an inside look at how that rollout process is taking place. President-elect Biden's home state of Delaware could begin vaccinating its first round of recipients in just days. Joining us now is Delaware's Public Health Director, Dr. Carol Rattay. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor. Give us a timeline here, if you would. If FDA approval does come this week, how soon after that approval will the first residents of Delaware be able to receive shots?
Yeah, so we're super excited to receive the vaccine here, vaccines that look effective and safe. So we're eager for the FDA emergency approval, and we have already placed our order. So as soon as the federal government is able to get those vaccines into the state, we're ready to receive them.
And what's the math currently look like? How many people will be able to be vaccinated right away? Who will get those shots? And how were those decisions made?
We have certainly been following along very closely with the CDC's ACIP or ACIP group and the recommendations that they have been coming out with. Additionally, we have an ethics committee here in Delaware that has been meeting very regularly. Both groups are in agreement that the highest priority groups to receive the vaccine include healthcare providers who are on the front line, so especially those who are providing care for COVID patients or patients that are of higher risk for having COVID. Additionally, it's very important for us to vaccinate long-term care staff as well as residents. So those are the folks that are the highest, they're high on our list.
Any idea how long it'll take for Delaware to reach herd immunity? When we spoke with Dr. Fauci last week, he estimated that would come at about 70% of the population.
Yeah, so we do anticipate that's going to take a while. We know that we're not going to have abundant amounts of vaccine for the general public probably until spring, March, April, May. Additionally, we want to certainly make sure that all Delawareans are comfortable with the vaccine. We know that right now there's concerns.
And what's your message to people once they do start getting the vaccine with regard to the types of precautions that they'll still need to take even after the fact?
Yes, absolutely. We are happy that we know that we've got plenty of Delawareans who are eager to be vaccinated, but it is going to be a while before we can really let our guard down. The mask wearing, which is a mandate here in our state, is going to have to continue until we reach that herd immunity that you mentioned.
And lastly, doctor, what, if anything, keeps you up at night as it pertains to coronavirus and these vaccines?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things. I certainly worry about the long-term impacts of this vaccine on the health of people. There's still so much that we don't know about COVID and the impact it has long-term on individuals. We certainly grieve and are very concerned about those who have passed away. Right now, we're seeing our numbers increase significantly, including our hospitalizations. So we are concerned about hospital capacity. We're doing fine right now, but those numbers tend to go up quickly. And so, we continue to have a lot of concerns that we're working to address in our state.
Dr. Carol Rattay, we thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
With the pandemic raging, millions continue to suffer economically as well. Meanwhile, congressional lawmakers remain unable to agree on a new multi-billion-dollar COVID relief plan. So in homes across the country, many are fearful that moratoriums meant to protect them from eviction will expire in just weeks, potentially leaving them homeless. Marcus Moore has more from Houston.
Melissa Flores is hoping the help she so desperately needs is inside this Houston church turned eviction clinic.
I used to clean houses. I've been trying to do applications everywhere. They're not hiring. They're not accepting nobody. It's really hard.
The single mother, like millions of others affected by the pandemic, can no longer afford her rent. In a few weeks, more than 24 federal stimulus programs are set to expire unless Congress strikes a new multi-billion-dollar COVID relief bill. Among the programs ending soon is the CDC eviction moratorium. If it expires, it would leave up to 5 million tenants facing eviction in January, the beginning of winter, and Melissa is one of them. Nearly 16,000 filing for eviction in Houston since the spring. In September, Harris County's Precinct 1 turned to GoFundMe instead of the federal government and raised $250,000 for an evictions assistance program that provides free legal guidance to landlords and tenants.
Part of my job, and it's the worst part of my job, but I have to do it, is to evict people. And when I saw this starting to happen, I said, we've got to be part of a solution. We've got to bring people a solution. And I wanted to be most impactful. We picked the highest zip codes in Harris County to go and bring the actual legal assistance out to the people, to the neighborhoods. I was concerned that people wouldn't be able to get there by car. They weren't able to get there to come downtown. So we brought it all out into the neighborhood.
We watched as they helped Melissa.
I've never been in this situation ever before in my life. I've never had to come out to ask for help, never. I've always made it through everything. Struggle a little, but I've made it. But never this bad, never this bad.
After losing her job as a housekeeper, Melissa was barely able to scrape by. Her boyfriend, who was helping her make ends meet, was deported to Honduras, leaving her with no help to care for her 11-year-old daughter.
It's just you. Yes, right now it's by myself. There's a lot of people at the apartment complex, like a lot of families still there going through a lot.
COVID-19 has driven the country to record-setting unemployment numbers. Houston, which employs nearly a third of the nation's jobs in the oil and gas industry, has been especially hard hit as the pandemic has caused an energy oversupply. Companies like ExxonMobil announced plans to lay off 14,000 employees globally, 1,900 of them in the U.S. and mainly in the Houston area.
And I was 60 years old. I was working at a plant, and now they ain't hiring because of COVID-19. So I was unemployed. Now they say the unemployment is over, so I didn't pay my rent, so I got an eviction notice.
When you displace somebody out of a home, they have to go and they have to live with somebody else. They have to go to a friend, they have to go to a relative's house. And you're confining more and more people together in a confined space, which of course is going to allow the virus to potentially spread. And so the more and more people that are confined in a home, the more and more people that are forced to be with one another, raises the chance that the virus can spread.
If I get sick as old as I am, I don't know if I'm gonna live. I'm scared of death.
David Butler, a former taxi driver, attended a clinic in October. Although he invoked the moratorium, he is fearful of what he will do after it expires.
It's just before all of this happened, I was in a townhouse, and I had to climb stairs. And due to my health issue, my cardiologist recommended that I let the townhouse go because the stairs was playing a very important part in me running in and out of the hospital.
Really impacting your health.
Right, and so he recommended that I find a flat.
Due to his health issues, he was unable to work after he moved and is now 6 months behind on rent.
We have to be fair to the landlords as well from this, because they have mortgage payments to pay, they have property taxes to pay, they have insurance to pay, they have repairs to make. So it's a big problem, and it's a problem that impacts the renters and the landlords as well.
We have witnessed scenes like this play out across the country. Housing advocate Caleb Kosick in Pennsylvania is also working to combat the national housing crisis.
One of the biggest issues of the CDC order is the clause that states it only covers cases of non-payment of rent. So landlords can say that the lease is expired, the lease is being terminated, there was some violation of the lease. They can claim fraud for any sort of anything, honestly. And when they do that, they can then sue for possession.
According to the global advisory firm Stout, Rissius & Ross, at the moratorium's end, more than $30 billion in back rent will be due. Some estimates are much higher than that.
The thing that I'm most worried about, by far, is at the end of this pandemic, the money doesn't stop accruing. So rent is still accruing every month. So at the end of this pandemic, many of these people are going to owe their landlord tens of thousands of dollars. And where are they coming up with that money?
For Melissa, the clinic was able to get her the help she needed to delay her eviction. A weight lifted from her shoulders for now. But this is a very temporary solution. While what lies in the days ahead is unknown, she is relying on her faith. She awaits what is to come.
And do you know what you will do come January?
Only God knows. I don't know. To be honest with you, I wouldn't know. I just got to wait until that day gets here.
Marcus Moore, ABC News, Houston.
So difficult to see those stories playing out. Our thanks to Marcus for that. And from the housing fallout to education and the difficult decisions that are now being made here in New York, many students went back to in-person learning despite the risks involved. It comes as students, parents, and teachers all over the country have been voicing their concerns about falling behind. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, some New York City classrooms open again under new guidelines, including random COVID testing every week.
I'm a little nervous about her going back to school.
But as the virus surges across the country and many schools remain closed or on a hybrid model, parents and teachers are sounding the alarm on the crippling effects of remote learning.
Remember that one?
From schools in Illinois,
we know that they are falling behind at rates that we are not satisfied with, we are not happy with. It breaks our hearts.
Open our schools.
To parents demanding schools open in Tennessee and in Virginia.
Virtual learning so far has been an utter disaster. The kids are falling behind. They're unhappy.
Coast to coast, school districts showing rising numbers of students with failing grades. In Houston, 42% of students received at least one F in the first grading period of the year. And in St. Paul, Minnesota, nearly 40% of grades for high school students were Fs, double the amount in a typical year. Those already disadvantaged hit particularly hard, magnifying inequalities for students of color and English learners. Like Tuba Khan, a junior in high school.
I used to like math, but like when all this started happening, like virtual learning, then I start hating like math. You can't do like math online.
Tonight, some school districts are trying to figure out how to help those struggling students by changing the grading system or giving extra time to complete assignments. Lindsay?
Rachel, thanks so much. When we come back, the CDC is calling in-person shopping a high-risk activity. So if you have to go inside a store this holiday season, how do you do so safely? We have some tips. The investigation now underway in Ohio after police gunned down a man whose family says he was just on his way home from the dentist. But up next, our look at the dual Senate races in Georgia that may impact the balance of power in the Senate. Last night, one candidate was criticized for refusing to show up at a debate, while another was criticized for her performance.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know seems to change, well, like every day. So what is it that you really need to know, want to know, to help you not just get through your day, but make the most of it? Feel smarter, feel better, feel happier. Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon? GMA 3, what you need to know. It's all about you. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. This is going to be so good.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
What you're seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall. This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
Your mom said, comb your hair. Your dad told you, smarten up. Your dog is judging you right now. And your best friend just called you crazy. We all need someone who'll pull no punches and give it to us straight. Now imagine getting your news like that. No bull, no spin, just give it to me straight. Straightforward news, straight to the heart of the story. ABC News, straightforward.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
We turn now to Georgia and those 2 key Senate runoff elections that will determine which party ultimately gets control of the U.S. Senate. President Trump campaigned there for the Republican candidates over the weekend, still insisting he won Georgia and the entire election. But tonight, Georgia has certified the 2020 vote for Joe Biden for a second time. And those Senate races are drawing national attention and millions in political donations. ABC's Steve Osunsami has the latest from Atlanta.
The deadline in Georgia to register to vote in this upcoming runoff election is tonight. And at a rally here over the weekend, the president was trying to help the 2 sitting Republican senators who hope to hold on to their seats.
Friends of mine say, let's not vote. We're not going to vote because we're angry about the presidential election. But if you do that, the radical left wins.
The real worry that Republicans might not show up to vote is born from the president's own made-up stories about widespread election fraud in the November election. He still refuses to admit that he lost here to Joe Biden, and he continues to bash Georgia's governor, who says he's not overturning the election. And now the president is saying this, even as the pandemic rages.
I probably worked harder in the last 3 weeks than I've ever worked in my life.
Senator Kelly Loeffler has sided with the president over the governor.
Yes or no, Senator Loeffler, did Donald Trump lose?
At a Sunday night debate, when asked by her opponent, Reverend Raphael Warnock, who won the election, she couldn't clearly answer.
You know,
President Trump has every right to use every legal recourse available.
That legal recourse is drying up. Today, 2 lawsuits from the Trump team were thrown out of court.
We have now counted legally cast ballots 3 times, and the results remain unchanged.
Senator David Perdue was a no-show Sunday, and Jon Ossoff had the floor to himself.
Your senator is refusing to answer questions and debate his opponent because he believes he shouldn't have to.
Right, kind of awkward having a one-man debate there. Steve Osunsami joins us now. Steve, high stakes in these 2 races. So is there concern among Republicans that President Trump's attempts to cast doubt on the election results could actually keep Republican voters from turning out in January?
Concern is actually an understatement. There's worry, fear. Republicans are talking about this. You hear Trump supporters at their rallies say that the election was so rigged that it makes no sense to vote, that they don't trust the Dominion machines that will be tabulating these ballots, so why vote again? So no, that is a very, very real concern, and the president was essentially trying to do a bit of damage control, damage that many Republicans here feel that he caused. So no, that is a serious concern. Meanwhile, Democrats are frankly enjoying that conversation that Republicans are having. I would call it alike to a Republican civil war is what's happening in the state of Georgia right now, Lindsay.
Oh, wow. Okay. And we also saw those 2 debates over the weekend. Are Georgia Democrats engaged in these races in any sense of whether they'll turn out in big numbers as they did for Joe Biden?
Absolutely. The Senate race was on Georgia Public Television, but just my sense in living here is it was well watched by Georgians and especially Democrats, and some indication that you can look to see sort of where the interest level is. We know that in the last election, most of the absentee ballots broke heavily, very heavily for Joe Biden in the election. Currently, the Secretary of State is reporting that they have had requests for nearly 1 million absentee ballots in this election. To put that in perspective, there were only about 1.3 million absentee ballots cast in the November election. So that is, many would say, a sure sign that Democrats are engaged and filling out, submitting those absentee ballot requests to get their votes in.
Yeah, we're going to
Lindsay.
continue to monitor it there closely. Steve Osunsami, our thanks to you. Still ahead here on Prime, the nasty note left for one Arkansas family who put up a black Santa holiday decoration. What their neighborhood did next might surprise you. The man convicted in assault and rape of Amanda Knox's dead roommate is now free. Why a judge is letting the man Knox calls a forgotten killer complete his sentence with community service. But up next, Bob Dylan is selling his music, all of it. What that means and why now, by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. The Olympics is now announcing that breakdancing or breaking will be one of the competitions in the 2024 games.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source, ABC News. Wow. Breaking news, live events as they happen, streaming live, non-stop, straight to you. Original, on the edge, breakthrough storytelling. From ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want, free. And imagine the most celebrated, epic live events and moments, all playing out right before your eyes.
See those flames behind me?
And go deeper inside the groundbreaking exclusives from the campaign trail only ABC News gets. Watch ABC News Live right now and anytime. Streaming on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
ABC News Live, streaming everywhere, right to you.
ABC News Live.
The Americans here on the ground and the Iraqis, 18,000 tons. Patatas. Ismail? David. Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael. You can see just home after home. David, nice to meet you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Yes, mornings may look different these days, but where you start your day,
where you spend your mornings, where you get connected to everything that's happening.
And face it, there's a whole lot happening in our world these days.
Where you get all the breaking new information of the day to help you navigate through these times.
That's why we're here.
Good morning, sunshine.
And making sure you start your day off with a smile and some sunshine.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America. Oh, how I love saying that.
Wake me up.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
And you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changing.
That is, of course, music legend Bob Dylan singing his 1963 classic that captured the voice of a generation. He's now sold his entire catalog of songs, including that one, to Universal Media Publishing Group in what's being touted as the most important music publishing deal of all time. Here is a look by the numbers. More than 600 songs spanning 60 years. That's what Bob Dylan has sold for a reported $300 million. Universal now will control the copyrights and collect all future income from the groundbreaking music. In his astonishing career, Dylan has sold more than 125 million records worldwide. He's won 11 Grammy Awards and 1 Academy Award for the song Things Have Changed from the 2000 film Wonder Boys. And most notably, he's the first and only songwriter to ever win the Nobel Prize for Literature, and was credited with creating, quote, a new poetic expression through song. Days before Dylan's historic music sale, we told you about rock legend Stevie Nicks also sold for an estimated $100 million publishing rights to her song catalog. And this comes as revenue from music streaming has been growing, and with it, the value of owning publishing rights. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime. The skier that fell into a volcano and lived to tell the tale. Plus, Sean Penn, Oscar-winning actor and director, now on the front lines of the COVID fight as he tries to build up testing capacity. His message for those in Hollywood not willing to help the less fortunate. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown Hate, The War Among Us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. #1 in politics, and most watched across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show, and #1 in streaming news. Most trusted, most watched. ABC News is America's #1 news.
What's the most innovative daily news podcast out there to listen to every day? Well, the Edward R. Murrow Awards say it's Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. Even the New York Times calls us a top news podcast worth listening to. So if you like getting behind the biggest news stories of the day, inside all the details, the backstory, and what will happen next, then listen to Start Here, the daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree. Listen free on Apple Podcasts.
Yes, mornings may look different these days, but where you start your day,
Where you spend your mornings, where you get connected to everything that's happening.
And face it, there's a whole lot happening in our world these days.
where you get all the breaking new information of the day to help you navigate through these times.
That's why we're here.
Good morning, sunshine.
And making sure you start your day off with a smile and some sunshine.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America.
Good morning, America. Oh, how I love saying that.
Wake me up.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime. 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
Officials warn the worst is yet to come in the coronavirus pandemic. The U.S. now averaging 186,000 new cases daily.
Pivotal week, both here and abroad. On Thursday, the FDA will hold a hearing on the Pfizer vaccine. If emergency use authorization is granted, that vaccine could be approved and distributed to states within days. But overseas, the United Kingdom is preparing to administer the first vaccines to the public tomorrow.
If at least 75 to 85% of the U.S. population gets vaccinated, experts say we could see some sense of normalcy next year.
Into the start of the third quarter of 2021, we should be in good shape.
But right now, things are dire coast to coast. ICU capacity is shrinking in Southern California as hospitalizations rapidly rise.
72% increase in just 14 days.
A day on the slopes turned terrifying. Caroline Sundbaum was out skiing with her husband Friday on Mount Hood, an active volcano in Oregon, when the 35-year-old suddenly fell into this hole called a fumarole.
The sensation was like someone pulling a chair out from underneath you.
A fumarole is a vent in the side of a volcano which emits carbon dioxide and water vapor. The one Sundbaum was unknowingly on was covered by snow. Luckily, a bystander saw her fall into the mountain and raced to help pull her out.
He had a rope that he was able to secure himself to and then lower the rope down to me.
Experts say fumaroles like this one seen in a previous rescue video are very difficult to track and can show up unexpectedly.
One man is dead following an officer-involved shooting in Columbus, but the victim is not who police were looking for. Investigators say it happened during an unsuccessful search for a suspect with the U.S. Marshals Service Fugitive Task Force. Police say 23-year-old Casey Goodson had a weapon but was not the subject of their search. His family says he was heading home from the dentist when the incident occurred. He was shot and killed by a 17-year veteran of the force. Family members say Goodson was shot 3 times in the back. The shooting remains under investigation.
The man convicted in the assault and rape of British exchange student Meredith Kercher is free. An Italian judge ruling Rudy Guede can complete the rest of his sentence with community service. Guede was the only person still serving a sentence in Kercher's death. A fast-track process resulted in less jail time, but he continues to maintain his innocence, now saying justice has not been done. Kercher's roommate Amanda Knox and her boyfriend Raffaello Sollecito were also found guilty, but their convictions were overturned.
I continue to this day to be shocked that he is the forgotten killer, the one who was quietly tucked away, convicted of a lesser crime, and does not have to live with the burden of being forever associated with Meredith's death.
What the hell are you doing?
Forget popcorn. For this movie, it's past the fried chicken.
I think I'm falling for the new chef.
That's not chicken grease in your eyes. It really is Mario Lopez as a suave Colonel Sanders in a KFC Lifetime original mini-movie called A Recipe for Seduction.
He has a secret recipe that's going to change the world.
Harlan claims to have some secret recipe. A secret recipe? Spare me. We all have our secrets.
A hot and juicy romance promises mystery, suspense, deception, and foul play with a runtime of 15 minutes.
Secret's out, chicken man.
Sexy Sanders makes his debut this Sunday.
Welcome back now to the holiday shipping dilemma. If your online gifts can't get shipped in time, should you go to the store and pick them up despite the warnings? Will Reeve has more.
As COVID-19 cases continue to surge at the busiest time of year for travel and retail, the CDC warns of high-level transmission, calling shopping in person a higher risk. In Texas, the mayor of El Paso saying a week's worth of contact tracing data from November indicated infections tied to shopping represented more than half of all cases.
Indoors with poor ventilation and people close together is a recipe for cases to emerge.
Retailers nationwide are doing what they can to keep cases low and stores open. Limited capacity, enforced face coverings and social distancing, and plexiglass at checkout counters are all now common. The National Retail Federation saying public health and safety are retailers' top priority. Retailers have been on the front lines of the pandemic, ensuring that people have access to important goods and services.
Waiting in a line in close proximity to someone else could be problematic. A long engagement with someone who's checking you out is also problematic. So potentially self-checkout would reduce the amount of contact you would have with a person.
Our thanks to Will. Now, the CDC recommends that opting for curbside pickup is the best option, but says that if you must go inside, try and shop during off hours, only touch what you plan to buy, and use touchless payment if possible. Now, you may know actor and director Sean Penn for his riveting performances that have earned him 2 Oscars, but it's what he's doing now off-screen that he hopes will have a lasting impact. As cases have surged across the country, Penn has worked to increase testing capacity and eventually vaccination sites. Our Zoreen Shaw caught up with him and has more.
The line outside Dodger Stadium for coronavirus testing stretches for miles. Tens of thousands of people getting tested for free every day. The Oscar-winning actor Sean Penn and his nonprofit co-founder Ann Lee's organization, CORE.
In this instance, this was more of a no-brainer to say, hey, how can we help?
Despite all the testing, California just shattering a weekly record for new cases and hospitalizations. Experts saying the darkest days are still ahead, prompting a major daily ramp-up at CORE's sites.
Right now are at 38,000, and we're going to increase that by anywhere between 30 to 50% in the next few weeks.
In a sane world, we all Americans would be tested twice a week. It would be, you brush your teeth twice a day, get tested twice a week.
As testing demands skyrocket, even Penn himself will be on the line with his own family, his wife and kids working in a race against time to help test tens of thousands.
It's been great to have it be a family affair. I don't remember a time where in those relationships where service wasn't discussed.
And now that workload could double, hoping efforts behind one of the country's biggest testing centers will soon simultaneously service what they hope will be one of the biggest vaccination sites.
In our pre-mapping, we are assuming that we can do a vaccination per every 3 minutes based on in terms of the administration of it.
The organization's model for testing now existing all over Georgia, in Chicago, New Orleans, D.C., even the Navajo Nation. Penn and Lee, guided by communities left behind.
It's mostly out of, I would say, rage, because, when you see that a lot of these things hit underserved neighborhoods the most, you get this sense of injustice, and it's more out of anger that it shouldn't and it does not have to be that way.
The powerhouse movie star and philanthropist are no strangers to lending helping hands, launching CORE in 2010 after Haiti's devastating earthquake that left 250,000 people dead.
I was a very lucky person in the sense that when the pandemic began, I had an existing infrastructure for a disaster relief organization.
Since their start, they've helped rebuild dozens of communities after natural disasters, from New Orleans to Houston to Puerto Rico. And even that didn't fully prepare them for a global pandemic.
We had some experience with an epidemic of cholera in Haiti, but that wouldn't have prepared us for being in our home country.
When COVID-19 struck, Penn tapped a range of contacts, even pulling folks from a film he was in the middle of directing.
We got forced into hiatus, and Sean, kind of ran into the fire to get test sites up and running through CORE, and I had nothing to do. Well, the movie was shut down, so I said, well, can I help out? What can I do? So I started just kind of volunteering at the test sites.
Penn also tapped into his celebrity circles, but he thinks there are opportunities for some to do more.
As many of these people that have been extraordinary, people from the motion picture business that have been extraordinary, I can't help but keep an internal list of those who didn't lift a finger and didn't write a check, didn't call of support, nothing. And I'll remember them too.
Now they're hoping outreach and their own examples will make a difference, promising to take the vaccine the first chance he gets.
I would take that needle live television. I'd take it naked dancing in Central Park.
Perhaps Sean Penn's most critical role of all, our thanks to Zorine. And just after the break, a community rallies around a black family after their Christmas decorations became the subject of a hateful letter arguing Santa Claus could only be white. The response when we get back.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, #1 in the evening, with America's most watched newscast. #1 in late night versus the competition. #1 in politics, and most watched across this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show, and #1 in streaming news. Most trusted, most watched. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
What you're seeing right now, this is part of the eye wall.
This procession of migrants goes back 2 miles.
There is going to be catastrophic damage.
This fire has made a run. You can see those flames shooting up into the sky.
We are on the jam-packed red carpet.
To the right, guys.
So this is the 4th weekend of protest.
Watch ABC News on location for Facebook Watch.
Breaking news, context, analysis.
With today's extraordinary news cycle,
Now is the perfect time for ABC News Live.
A streaming news game changer. The time is now for ABC News Live. Get it, streaming everywhere.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back. It's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, but for one family in Little Rock, Arkansas, things took a turn for the worse, all because of this, an inflatable black Santa. Chris Kennedy is the owner of the Santa that you see there on your screen. He's also the person who received a letter in the mail from someone claiming to be Santa Claus, attacking him for not having a white Santa. Joining us now to discuss the letter and the subsequent support from his neighbors is Chris Kennedy. Chris, give us a bit of the backstory on what decorating for the holidays means to you and what your reaction was when you received this letter.
As a kid, my dad used to decorate different homes within a more well-off neighborhood in my hometown of Longview. My dad passed away Thanksgiving Day, 2004. So after that, I started decorating our home or my apartments, early, just in remembrance of him. 4 years ago, when my daughter was born, she ended up having to stay in the NICU. So while she and my wife were both in the hospital for 4 weeks. So I wanted to do something special for my wife and new daughter. So I had the house decorated with lights and put up our first Black Santa, which was about 4 feet tall. And so since then, there's been a giant Black Santa in our front yard. And it's something that we've done for years and have had no problems until this year.
And so what was the problem? Tell me about the letter that you received.
So the letter, it was definitely a racist letter. It basically, it asked us to remove our Negro Santa Claus, and that we shouldn't try to deceive children into believing that Santa Claus is white. It also goes on to state that we should move out of our neighborhood and move out east with the rest of our racist kind. Again, I'm not originally from North Little Rock, so I don't know what that actually means. We live in a pretty diverse area, and I knew that it wasn't something that I won't say I knew. I knew that it wasn't from who it said it was from. The person put the Property Owners Association name on it, but I knew it was not from them. And then there was a second page to it that actually had a white Santa Claus with the thumbs down.
And let's talk about the reaction of your neighbors after you received the letter. We have some video from our affiliate in Little Rock, KATV, who spoke to some of your neighbors. Let's take a quick listen to what they had to say.
Be a crime not to say something. You know, it's that old thing, if you see something, say something.
If there's one thing that we can do, especially this season, is to just come together as the spirit of humanity.
And how did that feel to not only have your neighbors' support, but to see them put up then their own Black Santas?
It's been incredible, largely because most of those neighbors that you interviewed, I still haven't met them, but it's great that the community has rallied around us. It's even better that there are people putting up their own Black Santas everywhere. It's basically started conversations with within other families about just accepting other people for who they are. We have a sign out front that says, it's got a bunch of different slogans on it, but basically love is love. And with us, the Black Santa is, it's a representation of who we are. For our family, Santa Claus is Black, and we wanted our daughter to grow up seeing herself represented in everything from fictional characters to actual world leaders. Our daughter knows that for our house, Santa Claus is Black, but anywhere else, he's going to be what that family looks like. I personally don't understand why seeing Santa Claus as a Black character would offend or hurt anybody else when you could easily explain that to your own children like we do to our daughter.
Have you been able to get any determination as to who actually sent this letter?
No, we have not. I definitely, after I got the letter, I definitely went to the police department and to the postal service to file complaints to try to figure out who did it, but it's kind of a dead end. The letter was put in a unmonitored post box and mailed, so the furthest that we were able to track it was to the location that it was mailed from, and that's about as far as we've gotten with it.
Lastly, what's your message to the person who sent you this letter, and also to children and families who may have a Black Santa at home who might find this disconcerting?
My message to the person that sent it is, despite whatever you may feel, I will still show you love. I love all people. If you walked up to me tomorrow and apologized, I would definitely accept the apology and show you love. To children, I just want you to say, enjoy Christmas, have fun with your families, laugh and smile and love each other, spend as much time with each other as you can, and just enjoy the spirit of the season. And to their parents, just remember, Christmas is about the children. It's not about us. we as adults, we have to be stronger together. We have to be better together. As a community, we are better together than we are divided.
Yeah, we see the sign right over your head. Love lives here. Thank you so much for your example and for your time tonight. Chris, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
And before we go tonight, our image of the day. Take a look. The bride and groom all decked out in PPE. Now, this happened after the bride tested positive for COVID the morning of her big day. Instead of that unwelcome surprise, though, completely ruining the day, the couple still agreed to get married at a quarantine center in India, minus some of the elaborate customs and rituals. We wish the bride and several members of her family who also tested positive a speedy recovery and best wishes for a beautiful wedding and marriage as soon as they can safely pull all of that off. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us, and have a great night.